She thought it was the end. Trapped under the ice, her final breath slipping away. But what pulled her back wasn't just strength, it was destiny. You won't believe who saved her and how that moment changed everything. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story, and where you're watching from and why you're following this. Emma Sullivan huddled closer to the fireplace, her fingers trembling as she mended a tear in her brother's shirt. Winter had descended upon Colorado territory with a vengeance in January 1876, and the small cabin at the edge of the settlement offered little protection against the biting cold that seemed to seep through every crack in the wooden walls. "Pa, how much longer before spring?" she asked, glancing toward her father who sat at the rough-hewn table cleaning his rifle. John Sullivan looked up, his weathered face creased with worry lines that had deepened since his wife's passing 2 summers ago. "Still a couple months at least, Em. The trader who passed through yesterday said this is the harshest winter he's seen in 20 years. Emma sighed, her breath visible even inside the cabin. At 19, she had taken on the responsibility of caring for her father and 16-year-old brother Thomas after their mother died. Life on the frontier demanded resilience, but lately she found herself longing for something more. "The ice on the river is thick enough to cross now," Thomas said as he burst through the door, bringing with him a gust of frigid air. "Jenkins says we can take the wagon over to trade with the settlement on the other side tomorrow." "I don't trust that ice," John muttered, setting down his rifle. "Not with the weight of a wagon." "But Pa, we need supplies," Thomas argued. "And Jenkins says there's news about the railroad coming through." Could mean work. Emma watched her father's expression shift. Work had been scarce, and their supplies were dwindling. The promise of the railroad had drawn them west, but progress was slow, and survival remained a daily struggle. "I'll go with Thomas tomorrow," Emma offered. "We can test the ice first, take only what we need." John ran a hand through his graying hair. "I suppose we don't have much choice. But you be careful, both of you. That river doesn't forgive mistakes." That night, Emma lay awake, listening to the wind howling outside. Their mother had always said that the frontier would make them stronger. But some days, Emma wondered if strength alone was enough. She thought of the stories she'd heard about the Comanche who roamed these territories. Feared by many settlers, respected by others who recognized their exceptional horsemanship and survival skills. The tribe had been forced onto reservations in recent years, but some bands still moved freely across the plains. Morning brought clear skies but brutal cold. Emma wrapped herself in layers of clothing, tucking her long brown hair under a woolen hat. The journey to the river took nearly an hour, their breath-forming clouds before them as they trudged through knee-deep snow. Jenkins and 2 other men from the settlement were already at the crossing point when they arrived, their wagon loaded with furs and preserved meats for trading. "Morning, Sullivans," Jenkins called, his booming voice carrying across the frozen landscape. "Ice as solid as stone. Already sent my boy across to check." Thomas moved ahead eagerly while Emma approached the river's edge with caution. The surface gleamed in the morning sun, deceptively beautiful. She tested it with one foot, then the other. "See? Nothing to worry about," Thomas said, already several feet ahead. The crossing began smoothly. Jenkins led the way with his wagon, followed by the other men. Emma and Thomas walked behind, pulling their small handcart loaded with what little they had to trade. They were halfway across when Emma heard it, a soft but distinct crack beneath her feet. She froze, heart pounding. "Thomas," she whispered. Urgently, "Did you hear that?" Before he could answer, the ice beneath her gave way with a sickening sound. One moment she was standing. The next she was plunging into the frigid water below, the shock of it stealing her breath. The current immediately tugged at her, pulling her under the solid ice away from the opening dot. In those first moments of terror, Emma fought desperately. her limbs already growing numb as she clawed at the underside of the ice, trying to find the hole she'd fallen through. The weight of her sodden clothes dragged her down, and darkness began to edge her vision. She thought of her father waiting at home, of Thomas watching helplessly from above. This wasn't how it was supposed to end, just as consciousness began to slip away. Strong hands gripped her shoulders, pulling her forcefully toward a newly broken opening in the ice. Emma gasped as her head broke the surface, lungs burning as she gulped the frigid air. Through water-blurred eyes, she saw a face unlike any in her settlement, copper-skinned, with intense dark eyes and long black hair. Strong arms lifted her from the water and carried her to the shore, where Thomas ran toward them, shouting her name. Emma shivered uncontrollably as her rescuer set her gently on the snow-covered bank. "Emma! Oh God, Emma!" Thomas knelt beside her, his face pale with fear. She needs fire." "Now," the stranger said in accented but clear English, already removing his dry outer layer to wrap around her. Emma tried to focus on the man who had saved her, a Comanche warrior she realized through her days. He worked quickly, his movements precise as he instructed Thomas how to help her. My name is Emma," she managed through chattering teeth. "Taka," he replied simply, dark eyes meeting hers for just a moment. "It means winter." As darkness claimed her consciousness, Emma thought how fitting it was to be saved by a man whose name embodied the very season that had nearly taken her life. Emma awoke to the crackle of flames and unfamiliar surroundings. She was lying on soft furs inside what appeared to be a small cave, a fire burning steadily nearby. Her wet clothes had been replaced with dry buckskins and thick blankets, and though her body ached, the deadly chill had subsided. "Thomas?" she called weakly, trying to sit up. "Your brother has gone for help," came a deep voice from the shadows. Taka emerged into the firelight, carrying more wood for the fire. "The ice broke more after you fell. Too dangerous to cross back. He went around longer path." Emma's mind raced, trying to piece together what had happened. "How did you find me under the ice?" Taka added wood to the flames before answering. "I was tracking deer when I heard shouts. Saw you fall." He paused, his expression unreadable. "I have seen what river ice does, knew where current would take you." She studied him in the flickering light. He appeared to be in his late 20s, with a dignified bearing that commanded respect. Unlike the stories she'd heard of savage Comanche warriors, there was a calmness about him, a measured precision to his movements. "Thank you," Emma said softly. "You saved my life." Taka nodded once, then handed her a wooden cup filled with a steaming liquid. "Drink. Herbs will help with the cold inside you." Emma hesitated only briefly before accepting the cup. The liquid was bitter, but not unpleasant, and warmth spread through her chest as she drank. "Your people," she ventured cautiously. "Are they nearby?" A shadow crossed his features. "My band moved south. I hunt alone now." "By choice?" Taka stirred the fire with a stick. "The world changes. The people must change or die. Some choose one way, some another." Emma sensed there was more to his story, but didn't press. "My father worried about the ice. He was right to fear it." "Your father is wise," Taka replied. "The river sleeps in winter, but it dreams of spring. Dreams make it restless beneath the ice." The poetic way he described the natural world surprised Emma. She had never considered that those her community often called savages might have such depth of thought. "How did you learn English?" she asked. "Army fort, 3 winters." "They tried to teach civilization." A hint of irony colored his words. "I learned their language. They did not learn to listen to the land." Emma thought about this. Her own family had moved west with dreams of prosperity, drawn by promises of land and opportunity. But the harsh realities of frontier life had taught them humility. "The land here doesn't forgive mistakes," she said, echoing her father's words. Taka's eyes met hers with unexpected understanding. No, but it teaches those willing to learn. As the day wore on, Emma's strength gradually returned. Taka left briefly to check if Thomas had returned with help, coming back with a rabbit he had caught and prepared for them to eat. The simple meal restored her energy, and she found herself able to sit up and talk more. "Will your people be looking for you?" she asked as they ate. Taka was quiet for a moment. "I follow different path now. My father was great chief, wanted me to lead after him, but the reservation ... double quotes, his face hardened. I could not watch my people waste away behind fences. Some stayed. I chose to live free, even if alone." "That sounds lonely," Emma said softly. "Better than a slow death of the spirit." He looked at her curiously. "What of you? Why do your people push so far into these lands?" Emma considered her answer carefully. "My father believes in the promise of a better life. After my mother died, we needed a fresh start, but it's been harder than we imagined." "Your land in the East was not good?" "It wasn't that. We had a small farm in Pennsylvania. But after the war, everything changed. My father fought and came back. Different, the noise of the town troubled him. He thought the open spaces would help heal his mind." Taka nodded slowly. Many warriors carry battles inside them long after fighting ends. Their conversation was interrupted by distant shouts. Taka moved swiftly to the cave entrance. "Your brother returns." "With others." Relief flooded through Emma, but it was tinged with an unexpected reluctance. In the safety of this small cave, a bridge had formed between two worlds that rarely met in peace. "Come with me," she said impulsively. "Meet my father. He would want to thank you." Taka's expression grew guarded. "Your settlement would not welcome me, but you saved my life." "Surely that, some see only Comanche," he interrupted gently. "Not the person. Fear is stronger than gratitude." The voices drew closer. Emma struggled to her feet, the buckskins. Taka had provided keeping her warm. "What will you do now?" she asked. "Continue north. There are still places where a man can live by his own ways." Emma felt a sudden sadness at the thought of never seeing him again. In just one day, this stranger had shown her more about dignity and quiet strength than she'd learned in years at the settlement. "Wait," she said, reaching for the silver locket around her neck, her mother's final gift. She removed it and held it out to him. "Please take this, to remember that not all settlers fear what they don't understand." Taka hesitated before accepting the small token, studying it in his palm. "And you, Emma Sullivan, what will you remember of this day?" Emma met his gaze steadily. That life can change in an instant, and that sometimes salvation comes from where we least expect it. Thomas's voice called from outside, closer now. Taka moved toward the back of the cave where another opening was partially hidden behind rocks. "Your new path begins," he said. "Mine continues elsewhere. Will I see you again?" Emma asked, knowing, even as she spoke, how unlikely it was. Taka paused at the cave's hidden exit. "The winter is long, Emma Sullivan, and paths that cross once may cross again." Then he was gone, disappearing into the gathering dusk, just as Thomas and 3 men from the settlement appeared at the main entrance, their faces reflecting both relief and wariness as they surveyed the cave where a Comanche warrior had saved a settler's daughter from certain death. February brought no relief from winter's grip. Emma had recovered from her ordeal on the river, but the experience had changed her in ways her family struggled to understand. She found herself staring out at the snow-covered landscape, wondering about Taka and the solitary path he walked. "You've been different since that day," her father observed one evening as they sat by the fire. The lines in his face had deepened with worry. "It's like part of you is somewhere else." Emma tucked her mending into her lap. Nearly dying makes a person think differently about life. John Sullivan studied his daughter. "It's more than that. It's about him, isn't it? The Comanche." She met her father's gaze. His name is Taka, and yes, meeting him made me question things I thought I knew. Her father sighed heavily. The settlement's been talking. Some are saying it wasn't right for you to accept help from him. They'd prefer I had drowned? Emma's voice sharpened. Of course not, he replied, rubbing his temple where the old war wound still troubled him. But people fear what they don't understand. And there's history with the Comanche in these parts. Raids, killings on both sides. Taka could have left me to die. Instead, he risked his life for a stranger. Emma set her mending aside. Doesn't that tell you something about judging an entire people based on fear? Before her father could answer, the door burst open and Thomas rushed in, his cheeks flushed with cold and excitement. Railroad men are coming through, he announced. Setting up camp just beyond Miller's Creek, they're hiring locals for the spring construction. John straightened, interest kindling in his tired eyes. When? Advance party arrives tomorrow. Main crew follows in March. Thomas stomped snow from his boots. Jenkins says they're paying good wages. Emma watched hope transform her father's face. The railroad had been the promise that brought them west, a chance for steady work after years of struggle. We should ride out tomorrow, John said, already mentally preparing for the opportunity. That night, Emma lay awake listening to the wind. Taka's words echoed in her mind. The world changes. The people must change or die. The railroad would bring more settlers, further transforming the land. What would become of those who, like Taka, sought to live by their own ways? Morning brought clearer skies and a flurry of activity as men from the settlement prepared to meet the railroad representatives. Emma insisted on accompanying her father and brother, ignoring the disapproving glances from some of the settlers who still whispered about her Indian rescuer. The railroad camp was a hive of activity. Surveyors consulted maps while workers erected temporary structures. A large man with a thick beard seemed to be in charge, barking orders and reviewing documents. Name's Hollister, he introduced himself when John approached. Chief of Operations for this section of the line. John Sullivan, her father replied, extending his hand. My son Thomas and daughter Emma. We're looking for work when construction begins. Hollister's eyes lingered on Emma with undisguised interest. Don't normally hire women for railroad work, but we might find something suitable for a pretty face. Emma stiffened but held her tongue. The need for income outweighed her distaste for the man's manner. As her father discussed potential positions. Emma wandered toward the edge of the camp where surveyors were consulting maps spread across a makeshift table. This route cuts directly through the hunting grounds, one man was saying, tracing a line with his finger. Army says the area should be clear of hostiles, but we'll want armed guards just the same. What about the reservation boundaries? Asked another. The first man laughed. Paper lines don't matter much out here. Railroads got government backing. Land grants trump tribal claims. Emma felt a chill that had nothing to do with the winter air. She thought of Taka, who had chosen freedom over the reservation. What would happen when the railroad pushed through? Her thoughts were interrupted by shouting from the main camp. A group of riders had appeared at the perimeter. 3 Comanche warriors on horseback, observing the camp from a distance. Get the rifles! Someone yelled, and men scrambled for weapons. Wait! Emma called out, but her voice was lost in the commotion. Hollister strode forward, rifle in hand. This is railroad property now. Move along or we'll consider you hostile. Emma searched the faces of the mounted warriors, but Taka was not among them. The lead rider, an older man with gray streaks in his hair, raised his hand in what appeared to be a gesture of peace. They're not threatening anyone, Emma said loudly, moving closer to her father. They're just watching. Stay back, girl. Hollister warned, you don't know these savages like I do. The use of that word savages sent anger coursing through Emma. Before her father could stop her, she stepped forward. Have you tried speaking with them? Maybe they want to talk about the railroad coming through their hunting grounds. Hollister turned to John. Control your daughter, Sullivan, or you can forget about jobs come spring. The tension was broken by the arrival of 2 Army officers on horseback, evidently stationed nearby to provide security for the railroad survey. The older of the 2 approached the Comanche riders cautiously. Words were exchanged, though Emma couldn't hear them. After several minutes, the warriors turned their horses and departed, casting final glances at the camp. What was that about? John asked the officer when he returned. Hunting party says they're just passing through. Wanted to know our intentions. The officer removed his hat, wiping sweat despite the cold. Told them to stay clear of the railroad route from now on. Emma's heart sank. The collision of worlds seemed inevitable, with the railroad as its harbinger. That evening, as they rode back to the settlement, her father was uncharacteristically quiet. Finally he spoke. I saw your face when those warriors appeared. You were looking for him. Emma didn't deny it. I wondered if he might be with them. John Sullivan sighed deeply. Emma, whatever notions you have about this Comanche, this Taka, you need to let them go. 2 worlds are meeting here, and history tells us how such meetings end. The railroad is our future. And what's his future, Pa? What happens to people like Taka who won't surrender their way of life? Her father had no answer, and they rode the rest of the way in silence. That night, a late winter storm descended upon the settlement. As wind howled around their cabin, Emma made a decision. Come morning, she would ride to the place where she had last seen Taka, the cave by the river. Perhaps he had continued north as he'd said, but something told her he might still be in the area, watching as the railroad preparations unfolded. Dawn brought fresh snow and bitter cold. Emma dressed warmly, telling her family she needed to collect herbs that grew in the sheltered areas near the riverbank. It wasn't entirely a lie. Their medical supplies were running low. The journey was arduous, the snow deep in places. By midday, Emma reached the cave, dismounting stiffly from her horse. The entrance showed no signs of recent use. Her heart sank as she realized the foolishness of her mission. What had she expected? That Taka would simply be waiting for her. Return? As she turned to leave, a voice spoke from behind a nearby outcropping. Emma Sullivan rides alone in winter. This is not wise. She whirled around to see Taka emerging from the rocks, leading his own horse. Relief and something deeper washed over her. I needed to find you, she said, her breath clouding between them. The railroad is coming. There were Comanche warriors at the camp yesterday. Taka's expression remained composed, but his eyes darkened. I know. My cousin was among them. They bring news of what comes. Will there be trouble? Emma asked. There is always trouble when one people decides the land belongs only to them. He moved closer, studying her face. Why did you really come, Emma Sullivan? The question hung between them, demanding truth. Emma took a deep breath. To warn you. But also because since that day on the river, I felt caught between 2 worlds. You showed me a different way of seeing things, and I can't go back to how I was before. Taka was silent for a long moment. The old ones speak of souls that recognize each other across the distances that divide people. Perhaps this is such a meeting. The words resonated in Emma's heart. What will you do when the railroad comes? My path leads north still. There are others like me who choose to live free. We find the spaces between what your people claim. He stepped closer. And you? Will you follow the iron road your father builds? Emma hadn't realized she was crying until she felt the tears freezing on her cheeks. I don't know anymore. Everything I thought I wanted seems different now. Taka reached out, his fingertips gently brushing away a tear. Then perhaps it is time to listen to what your heart knows, Emma Sullivan. As their eyes met, Emma understood that whatever path she chose, nothing would ever be the same again. March arrived with the first tentative signs of spring. The snow began to retreat, revealing patches of earth eager for warmth. Construction on the railroad had begun in earnest, with John and Thomas Sullivan among the hired workers. Emma had taken a position cooking for the railroad crew, rising before dawn to prepare meals and returning home long after sunset. The work was exhausting but paid better than anything available in the settlement. Still, each day as she watched the tracks extend further across the landscape, Emma felt the weight of what this progress meant for people like Taka. They had met twice more since that day at the cave brief, stolen moments when Emma ventured to collect herbs or deliver messages between the settlement and the railroad camp. Each meeting deepened the connection between them, a bridge between worlds that seemed increasingly at odds. "You look tired," her father commented one evening as they sat at their table, the cabin now oddly empty with Thomas staying at the work camp during the week. "It's been a long day," Emma replied, massaging her aching hands. John studied his daughter with concern. "You've been disappearing on your herb-gathering trips more often lately." Emma met her father's gaze. There had been too many secrets between them. "I've been meeting with Taka. He's been teaching me about plants that can heal, about reading the land." She expected anger or prohibition, but John Sullivan merely nodded slowly. "I suspected as much." He set down his coffee cup. "Your mother would have liked him, I think." Surprised, Emma asked, "How would you know that?" A sad smile crossed her father's weathered face. "Because your mother always saw people for who they were, not what others claimed them to be." He reached across the table to take her hand. "I fought in the war to preserve the Union, Emma. I believed in a country where people could live free. Sometimes I wonder if we're building that country out here, or just repeating old mistakes." The railroad manager, Hollister, spoke of the Comanche as if they were obstacles to be removed, Emma said quietly. "Not people with rights to the land they've lived on for generations." John sighed heavily. "Progress comes at a price. Always has. But that doesn't make it right." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Your Comanche friend, where does he stand in all this?" "He's heading north soon. Others like him have gathered beyond the big river, away from the railroad's path." Emma hesitated. "He asked me to go with him." The silence that followed seemed to stretch into eternity. Finally, her father spoke, his voice thick with emotion. "And what did you tell him?" "That I needed time, that I have responsibilities here." Emma felt tears threatening. "That I love my family." John Sullivan rose from the table and moved to the window, looking out at the darkening landscape. "When your mother died, I brought you both out here because I thought it would give us a fresh start. But maybe I was running from ghosts that followed me anyway." He turned to face her. "I don't want you living your life for my sake, Emma. You deserve to follow your own path." Before Emma could respond, urgent knocking rattled the door. John opened it to find Jenkins standing there, his expression grave. "There's trouble at the railroad camp," he said without preamble. "Comanche raiding party hit the supply wagons. 2 guards killed. They're forming a posse to go after them." Emma's heart froze. "When did this happen?" "Couple hours ago." "Hollister's in a rage, says he'll make an example of any savages they catch." Jenkins looked uncomfortable. "John, they're asking for men who know the territory. I told them you'd spent time tracking during the war." Emma clutched her father's arm. "Pa, you can't go with them. Taka wouldn't be part of this, but if they're rounding up any Comanche they find." John's expression hardened. "I need to be there, Emma. If I'm not, men like Hollister will shoot first and ask questions never." He grabbed his coat and rifle. "Stay here. I'll send word when I can." After they left, Emma paced the cabin frantically. The thought of Taka being hunted, possibly killed in retaliation for something he hadn't done, was unbearable. He had mentioned others like him who had chosen to live free rather than on reservations. What if they were caught in Hollister's vengeance? Making a sudden decision, Emma changed into her warmest clothes, packed supplies, and saddled her horse. She knew the area, where Taka often camped, a secluded valley north of the river. If she could reach him before the posse, she could warn him of the danger. The night was clear but cold as Emma rode, the stars providing just enough light to follow the trail. Her mind raced with worries about her father, about Taka, about the collision of worlds that seemed destined for tragedy. After several hours of hard riding, Emma reached the valley. A small campfire flickered in the distance, and she approached cautiously. Relief flooded through her when she recognized Taka. Tending the flames, he rose quickly at her approach, surprise evident in his features. "Emma Sullivan rides dangerously again. There's been an attack on the railroad supply wagons," she said breathlessly, dismounting. "2 men killed. They're forming a posse to hunt down any Comanche they find. My father went with them to try to prevent more bloodshed." Taka's expression grew grave. "This was not my doing, nor my people's. We have avoided the Iron Road." "I know," Emma said, moving closer to the fire's warmth. "But Hollister won't care. He wants revenge. There are others, younger warriors who refuse the reservation, but also refuse to let the white man take everything without fight." Taka stared into the flames. "I counseled against attacking, but some hearts are filled with the bitterness of loss." Emma felt despair threatening to overwhelm her. "What can we do?" Taka considered for a long moment. "I can find these warriors, try to lead them north beyond the posse's reach. But first, I must warn the camp where our families wait." He looked at her intently. "You should return home, Emma. This is not your fight." "It became my fight the day you pulled me from that river," she replied firmly. "I'm coming with you." Dawn was breaking as they approached the hidden camp where several Comanche families had established a temporary home away from the reservation. Children played among the tipis while women prepared morning meals. The scene of normal life struck Emma powerfully. These were people with the same hopes and needs as those in her settlement. Their arrival caused immediate concern. Taka spoke rapidly in Comanche, explaining the situation. An older man with dignity etched in every line of his face approached. "This is Koda, respected elder," Taka explained to Emma. "He leads these families who choose to live by the old ways." Koda studied Emma with keen eyes. "You bring warning. This shows good heart." "My father is with the men who search for those who attacked the railroad," Emma explained. "He went to prevent more killing, but others are hungry for revenge." The elder nodded gravely. "The young men who attacked, they do not speak for all Comanche. But all Comanche will be punished." As they spoke, a rider appeared on the ridge above the camp, one of the young warriors serving as lookout. He called down in Comanche, his voice urgent. "Riders coming," Taka translated, his body tensing. Many men with guns. Panic erupted in the camp as families began gathering their essentials. Children were hushed, horses brought forward. "There's no time for everyone to escape," Taka said grimly. "The old ones, the children, they cannot move fast enough." Emma made a sudden decision. "I'll ride to meet them. If my father is with them, I can buy you time." "Too dangerous," Taka objected. "If Hollister leads them, it's the only way," Emma insisted. "I know these men. Some will listen to reason." Before he could protest further, she mounted her horse. "Get everyone moving north. I'll find you after." The distance to the approaching riders seemed endless. Emma's heart pounded as she finally spotted the posse cresting the hill, 15 men, her father and Jenkins among them. Hollister led the group, his face set in grim determination. "Emma!" John Sullivan broke from the group when he saw her riding forward. "What in God's name are you doing out here?" "Pa, you have to stop this," she pleaded. "The people in that camp had nothing to do with the attack. There are children there, elders." Hollister urged his horse forward. "Step aside, girl. We're delivering justice." "Justice," Emma challenged. or just revenge against any Comanche you can find. Her father positioned his horse between Emma and Hollister. My daughter's right. We came for the raiders, not to terrorize innocent families. Innocent? Hollister spat. There are no innocent savages. They're all cut from the same cloth. Several of the men shifted uncomfortably, exchanging glances. Jenkins spoke up. I didn't sign on to harm women and children, Hollister. The law is clear, John added firmly. The Army deals with hostile Indians. We're not judge and executioner. Emma saw the tide turning as more men voiced agreement with her father. Hollister's face reddened with anger. The railroad doesn't stop. For sentiment, he growled. Either you're with progress or against it. Progress doesn't have to mean destroying everything in its path, Emma said clearly. There's room in this country for different ways of life if we choose to make it so. As the standoff continued, movement caught Emma's eye. Taka had followed her, watching from the cover of trees nearby. Their eyes met briefly, an entire conversation. Passing between them without words. In that moment, Emma knew what her path would be. The world was changing, yes. The railroad would come, bringing more settlers, more towns. But there would always be frontiers beyond, places where people could choose how to live. The camp is already empty, she told the posse. The families are gone. Your quarrel isn't with them anyway. Hollister cursed, but most of the men were already lowering their weapons, the bloodlust fading in the clear light of morning. We'll continue tracking the actual raiders, her father declared with authority that brooked no argument. The rest of you can return to camp if you've no stomach for justice rather than vengeance. As the posse reluctantly dispersed, John Sullivan approached his daughter. You're not coming back with us, are you? He asked quietly. Emma took his hands in hers. There's another path I need to follow, Pa. A different kind of frontier. John nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. Your mother always said you had a spirit. That couldn't be contained. He embraced her tightly. Promise you'll send word when you can. I promise, Emma whispered. Tell Thomas I love him. As her father rode away with the others, Taka emerged from the trees, leading 2 horses. You choose a difficult path, he said, his dark eyes searching hers. Emma smiled, feeling a certainty she had never known before. Not difficult, just different. The world changes, but some things remain true across all boundaries. And what truth do you follow, Emma Sullivan? She mounted her horse, turning to face north where the untamed wilderness stretched beyond the reach of railroad tracks and settlements. That freedom means choosing your own way, even when others don't understand it. She reached out her hand. To him. And that sometimes falling through ice leads to the most unexpected warmth. Taka took her hand, their fingers intertwining as they rode together toward the horizon. Pioneers of a different kind of frontier, one where worlds could meet without one having to destroy the other.